What I started looking at was like the brief history of DAW systems, so starting back from like the 1980s, when it was first like just MIDI sequencers, where it's literally just because the computers didn't have enough memory to hold audio at the time, so that's the only thing they could actually hold was actual MIDI data. That developed in the late 80s, when they started to develop computers to be able to actually hold audio data compared to just having MIDI. Early 90s, software companies started to develop audio editing software for computers. Then there's actually a company, I think it's believe this to be a Canadian company, it's called OSC companies, developed a software that works alongside hardware. So you have hardware and software working together. And then between the mid-90s, most software was based on the Apple Mac, none really on the actual Microsoft format. In 1996, Steinberg introduced Cubase, the first DAW system that didn't require hardware. This actually reduced the price. It was also made to look like hardware within it, so it had the mixer, had the actual layout as if you would in the analog world. In the late 1990s, major software companies followed suit and created fully digital workstations. In the 2000s, software became easily downloadable for Apple and Microsoft computers. Freeware became available. Cheap alternatives and digital releases for the software as well. There's actually a quote here. Eventually, they emerged a one-stop solution for basic digital recording and playback. We added sample accurate editing, multi-channel mixing, and signal processing, and so there came into being an all-in-one solution with a digital audio workstation. There's an example there to DAW systems there. So it's like the freeware one that's Reaper, I'll talk about in just a moment. So it basically came down to, when I was looking at it, came down to requirements for what software you could use. For example, Apple's Logic Pro is only available on the Apple computers compared to the Microsoft, where it's things like Fruity Loops when you run on Microsoft. That's actually like a breakdown of the pros and cons for like some of the biggest out there. For example, there's ones like Mixcraft, where it's a simple, affordable price one, so on PC. The same game as the list there, pretty much all of the ones that you're going to be used. Another one's pretty good, like Reaper, free one, but it still is in infancy, so it means when it says that, it means that it's just beginning to be able to get compared to other bigger ones like Pro Tools. What I plan to actually research is how did you actually get into music production without using DAW systems? So before DAW systems, how did you actually get into music production? And what class of people would usually produce music without the accessibility to a DAW system? So it'd be a case of who are these people that produce music or got into music production before the actual DAW system was available? Also, you're going to look at like the cost of computers and the accessibility. So like teenagers and young adults have to computers at home and school, and how actually accessible a DAW system is to own. You can download digitally, a hard copy, how easy to actually get hold of, and actually the cost of DAW systems and the freeware, is that possible use for professional use? Now what's actually found so far, and I've just briefly gone over it, it shows that accessibility to a musical workstation in the past time showed that you needed hardware that requires wealth, but in modern times the rise of computer technology means that make access to a workstation, even though it's really digital, a lot easier. One can research away from having a working DAW station. For example, there's a DAW system reader here, where it's literally the main page. There's also just a download button you can pick for either one you've got there. For Apple, it was quite recent, and also for Windows, it's available. There are always works on Windows, Reaper. Another one from Computer Music quotation. It used to be that you had to pay big bucks for a proper DAW with all the features required to record, edit and mix in a manner for professionals and accustomed. But the rise of Reaper over the past few years has presented a genuine alternative. And it's not much to break down. It's just like a brief, it's just a rough guideline, so I don't go over the top. It adds up to about 6,000 lines at the moment. So again, if I do go off on one, so to speak, there's a room to maneuver. Starting with the introduction, chapter 1, I'm going to look at the actual DAW system, the brief history of what we started to look at. Chapter 2, how would you actually get involved into music production without access to a DAW system? What class of people get involved in music production before and after the digital age? Evidence of DAW systems helping younger, less wealthy people get into music production, and then it'll be a case of what the research has actually shown and the conclusions to my question. There's one bibliography so far, references, what was it?
Thanks, Sean. As I said previously, just be wary of how much history you decide to include. Just be very specific about the examples you want. But be aware though that if you get into a groove with it later on, you might want to kind of revisit that first section so you can retrieve some of the words from that, so you can use it elsewhere. So that could be your kind of your word bank, so to speak. So just be aware of how much you actually want to include there, and be very specific with your examples so that they really back up what it is that you're saying. I'm really pleased that your question's really focused now.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, it leads me to ask, how much is the concept of class going to underpin your entire document? How much is it going to underpin your whole of your research?
The more I start looking at it, the bigger it's like becoming the bigger question, really. So I might have to actually tweak my question to be able to, I don't know, maybe answer it, or so I answer it better, or the question fit my answer, if that makes sense.
But it's clear that it's definitely developing. Yeah. And I think actually as a result...
It's going in a positive way where it's more accessible, but it's just for me to action in the way.
If class is the overarching narrative that's framing your research, I think actually what that's doing is providing you with a really solid underpinning, a really clear theoretical framework to enable you to... Because it's very clear that you understand all the DAW stuff and all the technologies that are associated with it. Perhaps it's the other side that's going to be actually where your research really lies.
Yeah.
Do you want to...
Yeah, I think it's a nice focused bit of work. Are you asking, because I was a little unclear about this, whether these kinds of technologies are allowing people to do production, or are you asking how many people are able to kind of follow that as a career route?
I think it's having even if it's not career based, it's to be able to enjoy music production. So for someone, for example, like 14-year-old 20 years ago, it's really hard for them to be able to get into it. Whereas now it is a case if you have a computer, you have the internet, you can have access to it via that weekly program, and like links to like YouTube sort of thing, tutorials. It gives you the access to be able to learn.
So would you say then actually the whole of this has been a democratising, empowering process? So music isn't the result of high culture anymore.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is it's kind of an egalitarian process. And I hate to say it again, but Marxism would be really useful here as a result. Because you're looking at this particular mode of music making as being a socialist revolution in a lot of ways. Because you don't have to go to a recording studio anymore. You can do this by yourself, and that's a very empowering thing.
There's, I mean, again, kind of bearing in mind Jazz's point about getting too bogged down in the history of it. If you go back to the 1950s, even into the 60s, and you know, kind of the kinds of people you might get acting as engineers, particularly in studios, kind of came from very particular kinds of class backgrounds. You know, it was a very kind of middle class, you know, kind of science and technology kind of background. And there's kind of, I guess, been a general, I mean, if you look at the BBC, for example, or even the kinds of people who were, you know, working on bands like the Beatles in the 60s, you know, there was, it was a very particular social strata of the kind of people who are working in those kinds of jobs. It might be worth, I don't know, I don't want you to spend ages charting that history, but there's that frames it, I think, and would add quite a lot to what you want to say, I think.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think we're kind of out of time.